Do you guys like my background? I know most people do like bookshelves. I have my kids' Legos right there. Yeah. We build Legos like X-Wing. Hey, look, it even has like a little BB-8. Yeah, it's cute. I guess it's from the newer movies. Anyways. Welcome back to the Will Reads, talking about character deep dives. Did a poll on Twitter. If you missed it, go check me out on Twitter. At The Will Reads is our handle on Twitter. Or you can type in twitter.com/TheWillReads. That'll get you to that Twitter site. Go ahead and give us a follow there. And occasionally I'll put out these polls, like what character should I do next? And the resounding answer was Tam. Good old time-traveling Tam. If you listen to our podcast, yeah, we talk about Tam a lot. Ian, very early on in our podcast, predicted that he was a time traveler, and came with this crazy theory. So we're just going to roll with that. But no, this video is not going to talk about the time-traveling Tam. Great Scott.
Doc, I'm from the future. I came here in a time machine that you invented.
Yeah, no, we're going to talk about a deep dive into Tam. But before we do that, let's do a quick spoiler warning. This is going to cover stuff all the way from actually before Eye of the World, because we're going to cover a lot of backstory, and then all the way past the memory of light, because we're going to kind of think about what might happen after the story. So, and everything in between. So, full spoilers all the way through. If you have not read the series, and you don't want to be spoiled, just don't watch. Easy enough. So, with that being said, let's go into who Tam AlThor is. Tam, real name Tamlin. Yeah, actually I found that out. Tam AlThor is Rand's adoptive father. You find that out pretty quickly in the series if you can read context clues. But yeah, before I go any further into that, let me give you a quick description of Tam. He is a bluffy man, 5 foot 10 inches, with brown eyes and hair that is mostly gray with a little bit of black. By the end of the books, he goes completely gray. So before we get into anything else, I really want to go into Tam's backstory. That's where I did most of my research for this video, was on his backstory, because that's what fascinates me the most. And man, should Robert Jordan have written a book about Tam's backstory. And I'll get to why there's so much there later in this video. So let's start with who Tam is, where he's from. Well, Tam was born in the Two Rivers. Was the son of a farmer and sheep herder, just like Rand was in the beginning of the books, doing the sheep herder thing and farming tobacco. That's what Tam did. And as he got older, he got, I don't know if he was sick of the farming ways, wanted to see the world, but he wanted to go on an adventure.
I'm going on an adventure!
Takes off and leaves home at 16 years old. He is 60 years old at the very end of the books. But yeah, so 16 years old, he runs away. And at age 17, within 1 year, or at least a year later, he joins the aliens army, the Golden Bees. Without waiting any time at all, a war breaks out that same summer. And it's the White Cloak War. Not a lot is known about the White Cloak War other than what we get from the companion and a few other sources. We know that Pedronile was had become the captain commander of the White Cloaks, and he wanted to expand, their territory and their influence, and decided to actually start to try to conquer lands. So he invaded Altera, and then Merendi and Ilion came to aid of Altera and formed an army to try to push back the White Cloaks. The war lasted about 2 years. Really, the White Cloaks were kicking ass and taking names until the Ilion companions kind of came in and swept through and pushed them all back back to where they came from.
And these shields, boys!
Some of the outcomes of the White Cloak Wars, and that's where Saladar. That's Robert Jordan's cellar door. Saladar was abandoned during this time. Of course, that's where the little tower comes up later in the book. So that was a direct thing that happened on why that town was abandoned, was because of the White Cloak War. So fast forward, I guess it doesn't really talk about what Tam did. There's no sources talking about what he did that was so awesome during that war. I mean, he would have been 17, 18, 19 years old by the time the war was over. And the companions immediately took him in. So after the war, he gets appointed to the companions.
A stranger comes to our hall. Would you now? Here, let me have a look at you.
And talk about who the companions are. So the Ilian companions, the Ilianer companions, are kind of like the special forces unit of Ilian. They are pretty large. It's like 5,000, 6,000 soldiers strong, but they are the part of the army that's very well trained and kind of their shock troops and are the best of the best. They also are responsible for being the king's bodyguard. So they're pretty important, and they're pretty much full-time professional soldiers, where I think a lot of the enlisted people might get drafted or come up during times of war. They might just get a bunch of people, hand up some pitchforks and some rudimentary spears and say, here, go fight. This is a full-time warring occupation as the companions. So he works his way in the companions. He fights 2 more wars in his 20s, both with Tyr, the 2 wars with Tyr, while he's in his 20s, and works his way up through the ranks, eventually becomes an officer, and also during this time meets Carrie. Carrie becomes his wife, Carrie. She was a merchant's daughter. They did have 2 kids. The daughter, their first child was a daughter, died of fever at a very young age, and then their son was stillborn. And after that, Carrie was unable to have kids anymore. So Tam keeps on working for the military, for the companions. He moves up all the way to the 2nd captain of the companions, which is the 2nd highest rank next to the 1st captain, which is in charge of all of the companions. The only reason why most people say he didn't make it to 1st captain was because he wasn't Ilianer by birth. Otherwise, he probably would have. During this time as well as when he becomes a blade master. He became a blade master at 26. So a pretty young age to become a blade master. And although the story itself never says how he became a blade master, it hints to it a lot. Robert Jordan did say in an interview one time that the king of Ilion handed him the sword. Now, whether or not that was a direct, that's how he got the sword, at least. How he got the title of blade master. He might have killed someone, or maybe he did something heroic in battle, which is very likely. So, but his sword didn't come from a fallen other blade master, according to Robert Jordan. It came from the king of Ilion himself. Fast forward, years pass. He's now number 2 guy in the whole most hardcore group of the Ilian army, and the Aiel War breaks out when he's 36 years old. Now he gets pushed over to the lands of Carian and at age 38, 2 years into the Aiel War, he fights a battle at the Shining Walls, the Battle of the Shining Walls, and after the battle's over with, there's blood everywhere, and finds a dead maiden of the spear with a baby wrapped in clothing crying on the side of Dragon Mount. The mother's dead. There's no other Aiel around. They seem to all have left, and Carrie always wanted a child. So Tam picks up the baby, names him Rand, and pretty much retires, quits the military, and moves back to the 2 Rivers with Carrie, with baby Rand. And that's fast forward to Rand growing up, and then that's where the story starts. We don't know much about what happens once he gets back to the 2 Rivers. You can assume it's sheep herding and farming. Carrie does die at some point. We know that. But we don't know much details about Rand's childhood and growing up, or what Tam was doing during this time. And I would assume was just raising sheep and farming. So that brings us to the story itself. I just love that backstory. Like I said, I wish that Robert Jordan had expanded on these. He did originally say in interviews that he planned on doing a whole backstory of Tam and actually writing that book out, whether it's a trilogy or just a standalone book. We'll never know. Of course, he passed away, Robert Jordan, before he ever got a chance to write that story down. So we'll probably never get it unless they adapt it into some other medium like TV or movies. Other fun fact about it is the reason why Tam has such a large background is when Robert Jordan first came with the idea for the Wheel of Time, Tam was going to be the Dragon Reborn. There might not have even been a Rand. He was going to merge those 2 characters together, so it would have had some of the traits of Rand and some of the traits of Tam. But he wanted the Dragon Reborn to be an older person. He didn't want it to come across as YA, which is young adult. He didn't want a kid's story, a coming of age story. He wanted it to be like a hardened warrior, a soldier that then finds out that he has to basically be the Messiah. And that's when he originally started putting pen to paper. His idea was to have Tam as Rand, as the Dragon Reborn. So it's interesting, a lot of this background that we get about Tam. And as the story goes on, we don't get we get these little nuggets that at some point in the thought process, Tam might have been the Dragon Reborn, which is kind of cool to think about, because Tam's the man, along with Lan. But yeah, Tam is awesome. Source that I got that information from was from an interview with Robert Jordan at a Lord of Chaos book signing. You can look it up on Theoryland. So, moving forward, of course, we get to the book now. So Tam's not a major character in these books by any means. He shows up periodically throughout the books, plays some major roles, and he's important linchpin in a lot of the different events that happen. I mean, leading up to Rand becoming who he is, he raised Rand in a certain way and taught him a lot of stuff. Taught him about the flame in the void. I mean, that's a big thing that helped Rand adapt to using the sword so fast, is his father had already taught him a lot of these tricks that he learned as a soldier. Even without Randy even knowing that his adopted father was a soldier. I mean, he didn't know he was even adopted. So in the beginning of the books, Tam's one of the first characters we meet. They're walking down that lonely road when the Myrtle shows up. Tam doesn't see the Myrtle, of course. And then after Winter Night and Tam is injured, we don't really see Tam again until The Shadow Rising in Book 4. In the meantime, Tam and Abel, Matt's dad, do make their way over to Tar Valon to try to find Rand and return back without finding them. Fast forward The Shadow Rising, Tam plays an important part with Perrin and rescuing the Emmons Fielders. He did play a part in the Two Rivers battle and kind of becomes Perrin's number 2, or Perrin's number 1, I guess, over the Two Rivers army that he's building. He also is the one who trained Aram, the Tinker, with a sword once he decided to pick the sword up. Tam actually finds out his son's the Dragon Reborn from Mazrim Taim when he comes to the Two Rivers to try to recruit some Ashamon. That's in Book 6, I believe. And then Tam follows Perrin as they go to Dumai's Wells, and he actually leads the archer group from the Two Rivers men, kind of like their little army, to help in the Battle of Dumai's Wells to save Rand. He follows Perrin for a good part of the story. Like I said, it even helps with a bubble of evil that attacks Eden's Field back there at one point. Shortly after all of that, Nynaeve shows up, finding Tam, saying, "We need your help. Rand's kind of going nuts. Come back to Tyr with me." He agrees. They travel, with the capital T, back to Tyr. There, Cat Swain and Nynaeve come with a plan, saying, "Okay, go talk to Rand. Try to get him to remember his youth days." Because his mental stability is kind of faltering. Of course, this plan completely backfires. Tam's almost bail-fired by Rand, but also this whole entire event causes Rand to then go up to the mountain and kind of have his epiphany up there, Dragon Mount. The next time we see Tam is with Rand coming back to Tam, weeping in his arm, definitely sorry for everything. And then fast forward, we get to the last battle. Last battle, Tam helps out Elaine's forces to try to fight back the Trollocs to retake Andor. And then Tam and Rand have a great coming together moment right before Rand goes to Shal Ghul to face the Dark One, where they spar with swords together. And Tam then leads a division of the army to take the high ground during the last battle. Also during the last battle as well, that's when Perrin makes Tam a lord of the Two Rivers and puts him in control of Perrin's army, which much to Tam's dismay, he wants none of that. And that pretty much is it for Tam, because he's all the way through the last battle. So he's sprinkled throughout the books. He shows up maybe every few books, Book 1, Book 4, then somewhere in the middle with Mazrim Time, I think it's Book 6. So every few books he'll show up. He plays that great father role. What happens after the story? We can speculate a little bit. Who knows? Maybe go back to the Two Rivers. I mean, at this point he has 6 grandchildren, 2 from Elaine, and then if men had a viewing that Aviendha's going to have quadruplets, so that's 6 grandkids at least. from Rand and his wives. So you can picture, good old Grandpa Tam. I actually kind of like that idea of Tam just playing that paternal grandfather role and kind of helping out with the kids. That's a lot of kids. So who knows? Maybe go back to, like I said, Two Rivers maybe becomes like Nethrin, a big city, and Tam takes his lordship seriously. I could just see Tam going back and just sitting on a farm and living the rest of his days. At this point, he's 60 years old. He's seen enough battle. Whether he never sees Rand again or even knows that Rand's still alive, I have no idea. I don't think Rand ever comes back. I mean, that's just my personal take on it. Maybe the girls might find out, but I don't think Tam ever does. That's just what I think. Yeah, so all in all, love Tam. I'm excited to see him in the TV show. I hope they kind of expand him a little bit more. I mean, they've casted him with a kind of a major actor, and when I say major actor, I mean someone that people would recognize. Michael McElhatton, I think that's how you pronounce it. Most people remember him from Game of Thrones. He played Roose Bolton in the Red Wedding, and of course, was a bad guy in Game of Thrones. We'll see him play good guy. I think he has the look of Tam, so obviously he's an experienced actor. Excited to see that in the show, and hopefully that goes really, really well. I hope you enjoyed these kind of deep dives. I don't have much more. When we go to these tertiary, I mean, maybe Tam's considered secondary characters. I'd call him tertiary. He's not really present in a lot of the book. It's hard to find a lot of information. I do try to deep dive into a lot of sources and find some nuggets that you might not have known about Tam, especially like his backstory. Of course, you guys have read the books. I'm not trying to spend too much time talking about that. But as far as his personality goes, he's that calm, a warrior, Zen, a monk warrior, if you want to call it that. That's how I picture Tam, is that calm, cool, collected, wise warrior that's seen a lot of stuff, but also always has a good head on his shoulders and always has the right advice. So, like I said, love Tam to death. Hope he does a great job in the show. And if you guys like these, go ahead and give suggestions on what characters you want to see next and me do these on. I'm happy to do more of these deep dives. People said they like them. Make sure you subscribe to this channel to get more of these deep dives as well. We'll see who I do next. I have a couple suggestions that people have made. Feel free to make more. I'll probably put a poll on Twitter, and that way you can vote on what deep dive I'll do next. But until next time, peace.